Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our collective worship for today. It's quite a little bit of a different type of flavour to it, but still going to get you thinking about just to try and get you to think about a few different things today in your collective worship. So we'll start as we always do, and I'll share the screen. So we'll start as we always do with the lighting of the three candles. So we light these candles in the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. So for today in our collective worship, we're going to be thinking about making mistakes and to learn to look at our mistakes and failings in a positive way. Because I know lots of you are at home and some of you will be putting lots of pressure on yourself to make sure that you're doing everything brilliantly that you're submitting. But also the fact that actually we don't need to be so hard on ourselves because we can learn from some of the mistakes that we're making. So it's quite important to make mistakes as well. And it's trying to think about them in a positive way. And that's what we're going to be thinking about in our collective worship for today. So to begin with, I want us to think about when I was one of the things, obviously being in lockdown, is we get to go out and walk a lot. Obviously, it's about the only thing we can do now we're in lockdown. And when I was out on my walk at the weekend, it was interesting because I noticed lots of people, and there's like a trailway, like a walking route that everyone goes on in my village or in my town. And what I noticed when I was out there was there were lots of children on their bikes, and obviously some of these were on their scooters, and obviously some of them you can tell that they were Christmas presents that they may have had. And when I was watching, there were some children, and there were some children that had their dads running alongside them, helping them to learn to ride a bike. There were some that were learning to ride without stabilizers, and there were some that had got bigger bikes and were trying to do things off road. And then obviously there were children that had scooters as well, and they were enjoying sort of trying tricks out on their scooters. Which so when I was thinking about it, it got me thinking about that at the weekend. Um, and then when I came to do my collective worship today, I thought it'd be quite important to bring that in because I don't know about you, but riding a bike was really a really important thing for me to learn to do when I was a child. A little bit different to maybe your childhood, but when I was a child, being out on our bike and getting out and about was what I liked to do the most. Um, so I'm sure there are lots of you out there that can remember when you learnt to ride a bike. More importantly, still enjoy riding your bikes. And I'm sure that some of you are probably really advanced in riding your bikes, probably a bit further up the school as well. Um, but obviously, when it comes to riding a bike, it's a difficult skill to learn. And it's a difficult skill to learn because there's lots of things that we need to remember to do. It's not just as simple as jumping on and off we go. Because when you get on a bike and you start to learn, you realize that if you lean too far right or too far left, then it falls off. And then you need to be able to go straight in a straight line. And then you need to practice how you balance on that bike as well. So these are all really important things that you have to learn to do. But the problem with these sorts of things is trying to learn to do them right means that the only way that you get to learn how to do it properly is by falling off and making mistakes. And that's really how we learn to ride a bike. Because what happens is we know that if we lean too far that way, we fall off and we fall off and we will hurt ourselves. So we try and make sure we lean back the other way the next time. And if you always lean that way, you try and think, well, instead of doing that, I need to lean this way. And then so we start to realize what it is that we need to do. And by getting back up on your bike and trying again, we learn by falling off and making those mistakes. And when I thought about that, I reminded myself of a quote that I once saw. And it said, "We don't make mistakes, we only have happy accidents." And that's a nice way, and we talk about that what we were thinking about at the beginning is a nice positive way on thinking about those mistakes. Because without those mistakes, we wouldn't have learnt how to ride a bike or ride your scooter or do lots of those things. And without making those mistakes, you can't progress forward. And that's what's nice about this idea that it's a happy accident. It's an accident you've had, and because of it, you've learnt to do something differently. Now, how we look at those mistakes and failing is a really important thing, because when I think about it, and when you're sat there thinking about it, none of us really like making mistakes, though. Although they're happy accidents and we can put a positive spin on it, we don't necessarily like making those mistakes. So we might not really agree with that statement that it's a happy accident, because I know you don't really like making mistakes, because sometimes when we make a mistake, particularly when it's at school, our pride gets hurt, and we feel embarrassed. And sometimes when we make a mistake, it makes us feel so bad that it shuts us up and we won't even try it next time, because we're frightened of trying to get something wrong. And that's really important. And what's really important is I'm going to tell you a story in a minute about somebody that was this person here. She was so frightened of making mistakes, it stopped her from doing things that she enjoyed. And that's why we need to think positively about those mistakes, because otherwise we could be stopping ourselves from doing things that we really like to do. So the story I'm going to tell you today is one that's called The Girl Who Never Made Mistakes, by Mark Pett and Gary Rubinstein, and it's illustrated by Mark Pett as well. So this is the story of Beatrice Bottomwell. Now, for Beatrice Bottomwell, Friday began like every other day. She matched her socks, and of course, she put her shoes on the proper feet. She remembered to feed her hamster, Humbert, his favourite food, which was broccoli. And when she made a sandwich for her brother Carl's lunch, she used exactly the same amount of peanut butter and jam. When she stepped outside to greet her fans, she didn't forget to say good morning and thank you. They asked if she'd made a bed. She had, of course. They asked if she'd forgot to do her maths homework. No. What about tonight's talent show, they asked. I'm ready, said Beatrice with a smile. After all, her juggling act had won 3 years in a row. Most people in the town didn't even know Beatrice's name. They just called her the girl who never made mistakes, because for as long as anyone could remember, she never did. Now, unlike Beatrice, Carl, her brother, made lots of mistakes. He ate crayons and drew with green beans. He danced on his hands and played the feet with his piano. No, played the piano with his feet. Carl loved to make mistakes. At school, Beatrice was cooking with her team, with her 2 best friends, Millie and Sarah, to make a giant rhubarb muffin. They needed 4 eggs. Beatrice went to a refrigerator to carefully choose the biggest, eggiest eggs she could find. But on the way back, her legs slipped from under her. The eggs went flying. Beatrice was about to make her first mistake. But she didn't. That was close, thought Beatrice. Sorry, Beatrice, I dropped a piece of rhubarb, said her friend. Don't mention it, she said. For the rest of the school day, Beatrice could not stop thinking about her almost mistake. On the way home from school, Beatrice watched Millie and Sarah ice skating in the park. Come and join us, Millie. It's fun, said Sarah. Beatrice watched them slip and slide on the frozen pond. Millie and Sarah laughed as they wobbled on the ice. No thanks, said Beatrice. At supper, Beatrice barely touched her food. Is everything all right, kiddo? Asked her father. I'm worried I'll mess up tonight, said Beatrice, and everyone will be watching. Worry? You don't make mistakes, he said with a smile. Beatrice tried to smile too. After supper, Beatrice got ready for her talent show. First, she woke up Humbert from his nap. Next, she got the salt shaker from the kitchen table. And finally, she filled her balloon with water. The school hall was packed. Beatrice felt her stomach jumping around inside of her. Beatrice waited for her juggling music to begin. That's her. That's the girl who never makes mistakes, said a woman. Oh, we know she'll be perfect, said the man. When the music started, she tossed Humbert into the air. Next, she added the salt shaker, and finally, the water balloon. Beatrice didn't miss a beat. The crowd clapped with delight, but Beatrice noted something about the salt shaker. The specks were falling out of it weren't white. Achoo! Humbert was so surprised by his sneeze that he grabbed the water with the water balloon with his claws. Kablooey! Humbert, pieces of water balloon, and pepper rained down on top of Beatrice. For the first time in her life, and as long as anyone could remember, Beatrice had made a mistake, and it was a big one. The music stopped. Beatrice didn't know what to do. Cry? Run off of the stage? The crowd sat stunned. They couldn't believe that the girl who never made mistakes had made a mistake. Beatrice looked up at Humbert. He looked back at her. His hamster fur was soaked and speckled bits of balloon. Beatrice let out a giggle. The giggle grew into a chuckle, and the chuckle became a laugh. The people in the crowd looked at each other, and then they laughed back. They began to giggle, chuckle, and then finally the whole hall was full of laughter. Beatrice and the audience laughed until they couldn't remember why they were even laughing. Now, that night, Beatrice slept better than she ever had. And in the morning, there were no fans to be greeted. And when she got dressed, for no reason at all, she put a polka dot sock on one foot and a checkered one on the other. Beatrice and Carl made sandwiches. This time, they put the peanut butter and the jelly on the outside. They called it an inside-out peanut butter and jam sandwich. It was a very messy lunchtime. And later, Beatrice found Millie and Sarah skating in the park. They fell over a lot and they laughed. Now, people no longer call her the girl that never makes mistakes. They just call her Beatrice. So that's the story of Beatrice, the girl who never makes mistakes. And she'd put a lot of pressure on herself to not ever make a mistake, to the point that she worried about things and even stopped her from playing with her friends. So what I want you to do is think about Beatrice for a moment. She was missing out on so much because she was afraid to make a mistake. She was missing out on having a good time with her friends, playing nicely with her brother and having fun getting all messy. And then when actually she did make a mistake, nothing really happened apart from everybody had a laugh and she laughed with them. So I want you to take a moment to just think about that as we go in for our time for reflection. Think about things that you're going to do and things that you want to do. Are you going to let the thought of a mistake stop you doing what you want to? And what can you learn from the mistakes that you've made? So whilst you're thinking about that, if you'd like to place your hands together, we will finish with a prayer. Dear God, you know that we are human and you know that we make mistakes. Help us not to be defeated by our mistakes, but to see them as a learning process. Forgive us for when our mistakes hurt other people. Amen. I'll just stop sharing for a second. So there's an important message there, really, just to think about those mistakes. And maybe when we go back to that idea that a mistake is a happy accident and it's something that we can learn from, maybe that won't stop you from trying that new thing that you wanted to do just in case you forget or get it wrong. Or when you're doing your home learning, maybe something that you can do that and get it wrong, and then maybe you can learn from that next time. Because when you do get it wrong, nothing's going to happen apart from you know that you can do it differently the next time. So that's it from my collective worship for today. Take those thoughts away with you. Tomorrow we're going to have our collective worship in a slightly different way, because we're going to have our celebration and praise. And I've got all of the nominations in, and it's lovely to see all of the children that have been selected this week. So we'll be doing that tomorrow, and I look forward to seeing you then. So until then, take care, have a nice evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Bye.